Innovating Education Learning World in association with WISE, an initiative of Qatar Foundation.
Social media is a tool for political and social change in some countries, and also a potential tool for learning. Connecting people from different corners of the world, these networks break down barriers of distance and time. But how are schools benefiting from them?
Good morning from Canada.
Good morning, Mr. Wagner, and good afternoon from Brazil.
Here in Saskatoon, in the middle of Canada, these primary school children are going to Brazil via the internet. They link up with other children all over the world to collaborate on projects, ask each other questions and send each other videos. Today, they're talking about racism.
To actually meet kids and teachers from countries that you're learning about, it makes the learning so much more meaningful, so much more personal, and it kind of tells you the rest of the story that the books will never tell you.
When you read a textbook, it just tells you what the land and the geography and the climate is like, but when you're actually talking to them and getting the information from word of mouth and not from an encyclopedia, it's kind of like you're getting the full story.
It'll definitely have kids more interested and more excited to do this, where they actually have their little buddy halfway across the world, and they can talk to them like they live next door.
The children also make videos about issues like the environment and upload them.
It's exciting using technology to send these important messages out to the world.
For these children, leisure and learning have moved a step closer to each other.
It's speaking to the kids in their own language. It's tapping into something that they're already experts in, but it's bringing it into an educational setting and using it in a positive way.
While social media can bring teachers together, it can also divide them. Educators haven't reached consensus on how to use these tools in class. To know more about the controversy surrounding social media, I spoke to the digital tool maker John David. Social media, as the word says, are for being social and network up. But people can become addicted and isolated instead. What is your advice on this?
The big question, of course, is do we want to live in this world or this world? And the only answer that I can come up with is we want our students and ourselves to live powerfully in both worlds, but we don't want lockdown. So that idea of making sure that the ultimate learning resource doesn't have a plug attached, isn't a mobile device, it's another human being, ideally sitting next to you at the moment that your cognitive penny fails to drop and you don't understand something. But the next best thing is the ability to access and communicate at a distance.
Facebook and other social networks break down the walls of the classroom. But isn't it a wild, dangerous world that some pupils would face out there in the net?
I think it is, yeah. And I think that increases the responsibility on teachers to understand, but not necessarily to be there. I'm not necessarily a great devotee of any social network site. I think some of the constructs that run with Facebook for the moment are genuinely troubling or worrying. The notion that if you post your images onto a site, they are then owned by the company. So I think we need to be perhaps a little bit more savvy in our use of these media.
Social media is considered time-consuming and can isolate students and expose their privacy. Are teachers prepared to raise awareness amongst their students about the pros and cons of these networks? We find out more in this report from the Rudolf Steiner School in Düsseldorf, Germany.
This school has a definite, deliberately constructed presence on the internet, with its own website, as well as spaces on Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. The students upload content and the teachers act as moderators. They're all very much aware of privacy issues.
20 years ago, the Stasi was they looked at he's washing his hair now he's going out, and on Facebook there are children today.
It's actually the same.
They write.
And I think it's pretty naive to think that either governmental or commercial institutions do not care or turn a blind eye on what we write.
Facebook is like posting a page from your secret diary and pasting it up in a public place like a railway station where anyone can read it. Children are not aware of that when they're on Facebook. They think it's an intimate space, but in reality it's public.
Some teachers fear that social networks can result in children having only superficial contacts rather than close, real-life friendships.
What concerns me is the amount of time people spend at this level of communication. And as a teacher, I miss sometimes a depth of communication that I think internet doesn't necessarily encourage. Especially social network sites don't encourage that kind of communication that I think is very important for young people at this age.
It's also important to make sure that privacy really is protected.
It's very important for all institutions, including schools, to encourage the use of new media. But real-life contacts are important and can be fostered through social networks. Every teacher should know about social media developments so as to understand the world in which students live, to give advice and to detect possible dangers and help to deal with them.
Social networks also keep people in contact with their schoolmates long after they've left school and moved on to adult life.
That's it for this week's tour of the world of education. You can visit our website to watch all our episodes. And we'll see you again next week.
Learning World in association with WISE, an initiative of Qatar Foundation.